Hello everyone, my name is Fiona again. I am a product manager on Microsoft Teams, driving user engagement, making Teams feel more fun and personalized, and that everybody gets their notifications. Before that, I was working on an enterprise feature in Azure, and before that, I was studying engineering at the University of Toronto, while I interned at Amazon in Hong Kong. What I'm going to talk about you today is user feedback and being a customer-driven PM. We all know that user feedback is critical for building and improving our products. It's also a gift to have users use your product and be committed enough to tell you what they like and don't like about it. Yes, you do have to take what they say with a grain of salt to understand where they're coming from, because without them, you risk building something that no one wants. In today's talk, I'll walk you through the channels that you can get feedback with a crash course on the different research methods out there, the things you can do with user feedback once you get them, and a breakdown of the traits of a customer-driven PM, and how you can leverage that to grow a team that is customer-obsessed. And lastly, I'll share some ideas that you can implement today or later in your product journey to be a customer-driven PM leading a customer-driven team. Starting off with where we can get feedback. I think the first and foremost thing you can do is ask yourself. Use the product, the features, the service that you're currently building. Put yourself in the shoes of a user and see what you think about it, what you can improve. And then expanding that to your team and your entire company if you have that capability to dog food or have a version, say an alpha or beta version, to give it to your team members and company to use and try it out and collect feedback there. If you're working on an app, you could have an in-app feedback form that allows users to enter feedback while they use the app. Or if you feature or your product is on desktop or it lives in a website, you can have a chatbot or have a survey embedded in the website to ask for feedback. You can also leverage the internet. We're so connected today. People talk about anything and everything on social media. I'm pretty sure there's a niche for your product or some users who have used it and have something to say about it. So feel free to go on social media, look for forums, feedback forums. User voice is a popular tool that some companies use for users to add feedback, but also upvote other people's feedback. You can also check news outlets, tech blogs like TechCrunch, Verge, to say what they're writing about your products. And also look out for individual blogs to see what things that people are saying about your product or even your industry, that what they think that where it's going and what's missing. Offline wise, you can go to conferences or conventions related to your field, set up a booth to interact with people in the industry or customers to get their feedback. If you have the capacity, you can also go to your customers and visit them on site to see how they're using your product in their environment and what kind of feedback they have. You could also bring a few customers in a single place, kind of like a retreat, a customer on site, and have them talk about and discuss feedback amongst themselves. And you can, from there, you can find commonalities and the differences as to how your customers are using your products. And lastly, you can get feedback through research or hiring another consulting company to source these feedback for you. One interesting thing that I found recently was that Microsoft hired a creative agency targeted for Gen Z to see how we can target our ads and our copy to catch Gen Z's attention, which was super interesting. In terms of when you could collect feedback, I would say throughout the year or every day if you can. There's never a shortage of feedback. But if you're doing something along the lines of benchmarking studies, then you might want to have a fixed time for that. It could be every month, every quarter, or every year. And if your product that has a strict planning cycle or a release cycle, you might want to schedule a chunk of time before your planning cycle to get feedback and have time to filter them through and prioritize, and then take those into account when is your planning time. The bottom line here is that in order to collect feedback and collect useful feedback is to be where your users are and where they're going. Clubhouse being a prime example. When it gained popularity earlier this year, I see a lot of product teams go on Clubhouse and starting these chat rooms on, hey, tell me about your thoughts on product X. And even our team, we did something similar, like an AMA, Ask Me Anything, where we had product leaders on teams and had folks just join the Clubhouse room and talk about what their thoughts on team is. It was more of an experiment because there was just a huge surge of users on Clubhouse where they congregate, and that's why we decided to go on there and ask these people's feedback, because them being there tells us that they're early adopters, that they're committed and have opinions about certain products. So that was a great learning opportunity for us. Now on to a crash course on research methods that are common in the industry today. But before we start conducting research to get feedback, first, you need to identify what you want to know. You can write it down, discuss it with your product teams, and figure out what is it that you're looking to find out through the research. What are your goals? And then you can reach out to your researcher if you have a team dedicated to research. If not, leverage your teammates or people who have experience in this area and contact them earlier so that they can be aware of what you're thinking. Maybe they have similar ideas, or maybe there has been a research done that's very similar to yours so that they can plan accordingly. Then you can start planning. Once your researcher or people who's helping you has recommended a method, your team can work together to provide what that researcher needs to organize a successful session. And there are plenty of research methods. I've listed all of them here. I'm not going to go through all of them. Feel free to look at them offline when you have the slides, but I want to focus on this one here. So this graph tells us it could be a guide for you as to what you're looking for in the user feedback, and then selecting an appropriate research method for it. For example, if you want to get more insights, more qualitative insights on what users are thinking about your product, you could go with a usability lab study or go to their company to visit them on site, or you can do a benchmark study. But if you're curious about what users' behaviors are when using your product, an A/B testing is a prime example and has been tested over and over again to be proven very successful and very efficient. You could also do a funnel study where you can see where people enter and where do they drop off. If you're looking for more of a quantitative research to validate a certain product decision and your audience is fairly large, you could go with a large N quantitative survey to, for example, to get insight. Or you can do focus groups where you can focus on a mix of demographics and see what their opinions are. In my experience working on a B2B and B2C product, this is what I generally found. It might not apply to all the B2C, B2B products out there or different product teams, but in general, for the research methods that Microsoft Teams have used are highlighted here in in green. As you can see, these are more related to finding out what users' behaviors are. For example, these benchmark studies, analytic telemetry and analytic studies, and these diary studies where we followed a group of users for 5 weeks and they used Teams every day with their friends and family, and we followed up to see their thoughts week after week. And we give them a very specific assignment every week to see how they performed and how well they liked it. And in the B2B world, I felt I had a lot more face time with customers. And also because our customers are very targeted. They could be the IT team within a large enterprise. And it would be sufficient for us to talk to only the IT lead instead of the entire school or company who is using Teams. So the research methods in the B2B world tend to be focus groups, in-depth interviews, and these customer visits to really get the fine-grained requirements from those targeted users. Now that we know what the research methods are and have gone through the planning and conducted our study to get the feedback, what can we do? Yes, the work is just getting started. And this is where the fun part starts. You go through the feedback, analyze them, categorize them, and find trends. What feedback, which suggestions are popular, and what are the outliers? And then you can prioritize them based on a number of factors. It could be impact and reach. How many users am I going to satisfy by implementing this change? Are we optimizing for the 80% or the 20%? And how urgent do users want it? Is it something that they can't live without? They will drop your product if you don't have it in the next month, quarter? And how much is it going to cost your company, the engineering efforts? I put an asterisk here because it really depends. Depends on the backlog that you have, the priorities that your team or company has. And also, something that costs a lot doesn't necessarily mean that the suggestion is not good and should not be implemented. It's the same thing if a customer suggestion is actually a fair small change, then you could definitely take that into consideration when you're prioritizing what to leverage from the list of feedback that you got. And once you have that prioritized, it's time to fill in the gaps. You could either improve existing features or add new features based on the feedback. And lastly, don't forget, once you ship the product, please inform users who have requested this change that this is there and have them use it. It might make their day. This is so important. It's such a small thing, but I see many people forget about it, and their users in the process, they don't see much update and they lose track and they drop off. And that's definitely something that we don't want to see. Now moving on to what are the traits of a customer-driven PM? I have 5 suggestions here that I resonate with, but I think these are just overall good human traits to have. First one being a good listener. Let them talk and let them finish. Hear them out to see what their frustration points are. It might not all be positive. Some could be hard to hear and you might get defensive, but Hold yourself back and let them finish talking so that you understand the full entirety of where they're coming from. And being empathetic. Put yourself in their shoes. You might not be in the same demographic as them. You might not have the same struggles or same environment that they're using your product in. So keep that in mind and don't have any assumptions. And be inclusive. Ensure all voices are heard. Maybe your target audience is only one demographic. That's quite rare, but also remember that even within the same demographic, there could be various nuances. So take a step back and think about what makes your customers unique, what makes them different, and make sure all those voices are heard. And just being curious. What's their why for doing a certain thing? Why would they think this meant that? And ask in a respectful way, either in surveys. You definitely don't want to push bluntly on why you do this, because you could get them feel offensive or make them feel inferior in some ways, especially if they didn't get it, the ideal end-to-end experience right away, that they had to take time to figure it out. Be respectful and ask them why they did what they did. And lastly is to be energetic. And you're rallying the team. As a customer-driven PM, you're influencing the team. A lot of times, the feedback that you get might not be all positive. So it's important to bring that and share with the team in a way that pumps the team up and tell them that, hey, we're not perfect. Our product is not perfect. We're here to learn. And this is what customers have told us. And we're, as a team, going to make it better. And I have one more secret for you, which is to have a customer-loving routine. This will help you and the team to get in the habit of seeking and thinking about user feedback. First thing you can do is be in the alpha. Use the alpha version of your app, service, product, and try the new features, not from your team, but also from everyone else early on, and provide feedback. And then expanding that to your internal teams or your entire company to dog food. If there isn't a group already for dog fooding, go ahead and create one and check on what the dog fooders or teammates are saying about that feature. If you guys have a public forum for users to submit back, that's awesome. And you can see what's popular, what are people submitting, and what's new. If you are in a team that already has these feedback meetings, that's so awesome because you could just attend. But if not, take the initiative and host these meetings to share and discuss feedback openly with your team and bring insights to not just the PMs, but the engineering, marketing team, whoever you think should be involved. You can also move on to social media. You can set up a dashboard to monitor what people are saying online. I find TweetDeck to be super helpful to set keywords on Twitter to search for. So I have one set up for, say, Microsoft Teams, and also competitors to see what our users saying about their products. And lastly is to focus on data. Monitor trends in your usage data like DAO, MAU, and also make that your homepage. It's super simple to do in a browser. For example, I use collections heavily in Edge, where I have all these startup pages like the TweetDeck and our telemetry dashboard in a collection, so I can just open them all at once in one click. Now that you have developed this habit of checking feedback and sharing feedback, how can you influence in your team and take it to your entire team and even org so that everyone is customer obsessed? And this includes your PM team, your engineers, design, people in marketing, QA, data, and content. I think PMs were naturally involved in feedback because we're constantly out there looking for validation for our features before we even ship them. So we're already very involved. It's everyone else who doesn't have a lot of face time with customers. So you want to be the middle person to bring those feedback to them and have them make them feel energized about the feedback that users have been saying about the product, but also the opportunities that we can grow. How you can do that? The first step is to get them informed on user feedback. Collect the feedback that you see in these different channels, share it with them. And next step could be giving them tools to see back on their own so that you no longer have to be the middle person and source feedback and share them with them. Make it self-service so that give them links that they can check out the public forums, links to your TweetDeck dashboard or telemetry dashboard so that they can look them up on their own. And to sum it all up, you can have an open forum for you and others to openly discuss feedback. What did you hear today? Oh, my neighbor said this about this product. That's really interesting. Let's talk about it. And as a PM, it's also crucial to connect the feedback that you've been hearing from users back to your features. When you think about implementing something new, take a step back and think, did a user ask for this, or am I just pulling something out of thin air? There are pros and cons to each. You could be very innovative when you think of something that no one has asked, and something that people have been asking might not be something that you want to add to your product. So there are definitely pros and cons, and you have to weigh it. But it's important to, when you think about new features, at least have that thought process of going through that thought process of, did anyone ask for this? Or am I just building something because I want it, or someone said I need to? Then you can make it easy for the product team to access feedback on their own features that they built. They'll be intrinsically more interested to know how their features are doing. So giving them easy access will encourage them to be in this customer-driven, customer-obsessed mindset, and then it's a lot easier to drive momentum from there. Depending on the situation, you might need some extra incentive for folks to be customer-obsessed. Talk about it with your team, your manager, your leadership team to see if you can give kudos for people who have exhibited awesome traits and were superstars in collecting and sharing customer feedback, or some monetary rewards like gift cards, whatever floats your boat, and whatever you think will maintain and drive this sense of customer obsession. Here, I'll share some ideas on what you can do today to get your team pumped up about user feedback and the different ways that you can drive that culture. First one is quite easy, is to create a cheat sheet on where to find these feedback and share it with the team. So all the links to the public forums, where the in-app feedback are feeded to, where they can find out about, say, App Store ratings, all of these, especially if these things are all scattered around. Having them in a single place will not only help you, but the entire team. If you guys have team meetings, talk to the meeting organizer and reserve some time in those meetings to openly discuss feedback. Make it something that your team does regularly so that it's kind of ingrained in their mind. Yes, we'll talk about feedback. I will learn about feedback at this team meeting. You can also incorporate a section in your PM's feature spec that is required for everybody when developing a new feature to list the corresponding feedback and data to support why we're doing this. And lastly, when a requested feature is shipped, make sure it's mentioned in the release notes and announcements so that users who requested this are well informed about this new change. Depending where you are in your product roadmap, you might not in a position that's mature enough to do these things, but keep them in the back of your mind when you develop your product and have a more mature environment to discuss and collect feedback. So something that you can do is do a public town hall. A great example is Clubhouse. So on every Sunday morning, the founders would start a Clubhouse room and talk about things that they've shipped, what's on their roadmap, and open it up for questions for people to ask. So having these direct conversation between the product team and your users is going to be really helpful. And this will encourage your product team to be engaged and talk about and take ownership in the product. You can also create a dashboard that gathers all the latest feedback from these different channels, have a word cloud from Twitter and news and forums, and also a section for App Store ratings and comments. So just an all-in-one dashboard so that anyone can go in and get a really quick overview of what are people saying about my product now, last month, last 2 months. When you're planning a product and in the different milestones that you have achieved, you can have regular debriefs on the feedback received. In alpha, we got these feedback. In beta, we got that feedback. So that you could be a report out with all the feature teams, but also you don't want to be so siloed that I am on team A and I only care about feedback for team A. So it's good to leverage your team meetings to have these type of conversations or have a report that is accessible to everyone on your team. Lastly, when you're planning for what features to work on for the next quarter, next half year, you can add a prioritization factor in your backlog on denoting whether this feature was a result of a user feedback and how popular was this request. So that's what I had to share on how to be a customer-driven PM with some like crash course on research methods, where you can get feedback, what you can use it for, and how to be a customer-driven PM, the traits you need to have, and how to influence your team to be customer-obsessed. I sincerely hope you enjoy something new, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I just got back to vlogging, so you can catch me on YouTube and Twitter. I also write a weekly newsletter called The Creative Outlet, where I share my thoughts on PM, design, productivity, languages, anything that makes me feel creative. If you find that intriguing, give it a read and let me know what you think. This is my 5th talk at Product School. If you're interested in my other talks, you can find them on my Product School profile page at productschool.com/instructor/FionaGan. Congratulations for making this far, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. À bientôt，下次见喽，安녕， bye。